Once again, a very good evening to you and a very warm welcome to our little weekly podcast, Sweet Omagh Town Internet Radio. And as usual, I am going to be joined by my co-host, Declan Ford. Good evening, Mr. Ford. It is yourself, I hear.
Oh, it is indeed. It is indeed on this dark night. But how's things?
Absolutely fine, yes. All's quiet. I think we're getting back to whatever was normal, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would think so. Youngsters going back to school.
Aye.
Businesses hopefully reopening at some stage. I think now we're in people being injected. Never thought I'd see as many people clamouring for a syringe in my life.
All druggies. Aye.
No, that's it. At heart. Oh, aye. But we have done remarkably well here.
We certainly have.
Certainly with that inoculation, Yeah, well, it'll be good to, I suppose, going into the springtime. It's a nice time of the year,
Yes.
Nice time.
Yes.
Growth. Everything starts. It's like the old film, Being there, that Peter Sellers, what was his second last film, and he played the part of an old gardener called Chauncey. And he worked his lifetime in a big American estate. And he was inadvertently interviewed once about politics and about the economy. And the poor gardener, saw everything in terms of growth and the decay and death of the garden, the natural cycle. And the man asked him about the economy, but he just thought it was about flowers. And he said, yes, there will be death in the wintertime, but there will be new shoots in the springtime and things will bloom. And he was then automatically taken as a guru who knew all about economics, It was a very sharp little satire.
Oh, no. Well, I think our little programme's almost running a year.
Uh-huh.
I just thought about that tonight there. We started sometime in March, I think. Around the middle of March, from memory.
That's right. It's hard to believe we're coming up to that first anniversary of it.
Yes, I know.
Oh, no, how things have changed, but... sometimes the more things change, the more they remain the same. You think of what you see around you. It's the same old landscape, the same old town.
It has, and tonight's programme will be. Do you remember some time ago I suggested we would play an interview with Haldane Mitchell, recorded with myself and Marcus Pickett.
That's right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So tonight will be tonight. I've just put it up, and it sounds remarkably fresh. And this man is talking of an Omagh 1910, 1911, 1912, thereabouts, Declan.
Right.
Over 110 years ago. And he takes us through the town and its environs and almost in a conversation-like way. And you think of, things have changed, certainly, but there's some of the landmarks that if you're careful and thinking about it, some of the landmarks are there, some of the public houses are there, and some of the buildings and some of the family firms are actually still there. And a lot has changed, but it'll be interesting to see what the main businesses were in the town at the time.
That's right. I was just thinking some of the customers in the pubs are still there.
Could well be.
The next generation.
Yeah, because he actually does mention the Bond warehouse. I'm not sure down where Duncan's Brake Supplies is.
That's
for
right.
people who don't know it.
Yeah. Oh yes, that's right.
That building hasn't changed a lot. The facade is really the same,
Oh, yeah.
A lovely building it is. And that was a bonded warehouse. So he talks about that and talks about other buildings in the town as well. So it'll be an interesting programme. And you're getting the night off again, Mr. Ford.
Oh, that's it.
Your services are no longer required.
I am surplus to requirements. I'm redundant.
Yes, okay. Are you still Zooming with your little pupils and all, or what are you doing? Or?
I am still Zooming away, and I'm just footering away, doing a few odds and ends to tidy up. Not that you just keep yourself busy. And that's the important thing, You can always have something on the go, a little project of sorts,
Yes.
Keep that going, And so it'll be no length of time now to St. Patrick's, and then it'll be Easter.
Yes.
Just to spit away from that,
It'll be a quiet St. Patrick's Day this year, I think, as well.
It will be.
Yeah.
I think so. And all the better for that, I think, And so we'll just. We'll take, say each day as it comes, but each day is hopefully getting better and better.
It is indeed. I don't know, Dan. I think St. Patrick's Day was, it could be like the New Year's Eve and things. It could be past as best.
Yeah. I think. Well, I think of more innocent times, and one of the nicest St. Patrick's Day I ever had was up in Bunbeg, and there was a wee, like Bunbeg, for anybody out there who doesn't know, it was just, well, in those days, in the 70s, a wee small hamlet. And I remember there was a St. Patrick's Day parade, and it was absolutely beautiful. It was just the kids from the primary school, and just a very, very small parade. But between that and the smell of the turf smoke and the traditional music playing there, it was just it was a kind of an innocence, a simplicity, and it was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
It was wonderful, So every time I smell turf smoke, I'm kind of transported back to those days in Bunbeg.
Yeah. I heard your voice on TV the other night. What was it on?
Crime Watch, probably, or something.
No, it was to do with, it was an Ulster Scots programme.
Oh, how was I reciting Marshall?
You were. I woke up, fell asleep on the sofa. I could hear this voice. I said, "There's Mr. Ford talking to me."
Good Lord of Almighty!
But you didn't even know it was on.
I did not at all. I remember going up to record that.
Yes.
Way up to Belfast, and there were about 4 people around me as I recorded it.
Ah, nobody. Sure.
And they analysed every word, every syllable, and in fact, with 1 or 2 of the words I've said, I have never in my life heard anybody speak the way that you are suggesting you should speak. It just does not ring through.
No.
So it just I suppose that's the power of consultants. You see.
Yes.
Yes. There were so many who knew exactly what the dialect from all those years ago.
Yeah. Someone said to me one time, a Campbell is a horse designed by a committee.
That's it. The bane of our life, committees or committees, as they say.
Yes.
But I remember. God, that was a number of years ago.
Yeah. Well, I'm surprised. I heard you on. It was kind of a very good programme as well.
It was a very good programme, and they looked at the Ulster Scots tradition and that, and and the funny was actually for a class I'm taking or tutoring, I actually downloaded the address to the haggis by Robbie Burns.
Ah, right.
Which I had never heard in its entirety. Though, mind you, I've only had haggis, I think, twice. Both times, once in Glasgow, once in Edinburgh. And Robbie Burns was a remarkable poet. He's a bit of a boy, but he was full of life, and he wrote some lovely songs, some great songs, And I love the way that the Scots will hold him up. I'm proud of him.
Yes, indeed. Right.
All poets should be put on pedestals.
Oh, well. Put somewhere anyway. But who is your favourite of all time? To be serious.
Poet? Let me think now. I like Patrick Kavanagh.
Yes.
I love Spike Milligan's poem. Spike Milligan did a poem about beauty. God, it was lovely. I remember reading it, and it made such an impact on me. Do you remember Uptracks?
Mm-hmm.
If you get grit in your eye.
Yes.
Uptracks. Their tagline is "Get it out with Uptracks."
Yes.
Well, Spike Milligan wrote this very simple poem. He said, "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Get it out with Uptracks."
Is it true on his headstone the words are inscribed are, "I told you I was sick"?
I believe, I don't know if it's true, but it's like an urban myth, and he was a very clever man. He was a very, very, very sharp man, very clever man indeed. A man who had his own demons, but he battled them. And,
yes.
I like Spike Milligan, and I like, as I say, Patrick Kavanagh appeals to me.
Yes.
I like some of Marshall's poems. I like the more serious stuff. Me and Me Dan poems I got and Sarah Jane, they're a bit like a good song. They get overdone at times, and also badly done at times.
Mm-hmm.
That's what appeals to me.
Okay.
Simplicity.
Keep
it simple.
Keep it simple. Yeah.
Keep it simple is the best way.
Yes.
What about yourself?
Keeping it simple. I'll tell you a story. This is a true story as well. John Paul Getty, the American billionaire, was paid a huge amount of money to talk to these investors about the art of making money and various things, and they had an after-dinner speech, and he was the guest of honour at it. And he got up and they addressed him, and Mr. Getty says, "How to make money?" He says, "Quite simple." He says, "Borrow as much as you can for as long as you can, but make your payments promptly. Goodbye." And away he blew. But I suppose if you thought of it, You know, if we all thought of it, if you all could do that, you probably could make more money. You know, so.
Oh, well, that's it. Oh, for goodness sake! Do you remember the Alan Wicker program?
Very well, yes.
That's
Wicker's
where he
World.
interviewed-
Wicker's World, yeah.
Yes, Wicker's World.
Yes.
Where he interviewed Getty. Getty lived
Did he?
in England,
Right.
and he had payphones dotted about the house because he meant, why should I pay for somebody else's phones
Very
or
good.
phone calls?
Sounds like my mother.
Oh well, and Getty, you know, he was quite. He wasn't a man of great charm or great humour, and Wicker said to him, "You know, have you any friends?" And Getty looked up and said, yes. Well, you could say my best friend died today, and proceeded to talk about this man without a hint of emotion. Yes, I suppose you could say he was my best friend. It was a bizarre, surreal moment, and you could just see Wicker looking at it and thinking, this is not real. This man, there's very reminiscent of Mr. Burns from The Simpsons.
Yeah. Based on somebody like him, I'm sure, yeah.
I suspect so.
Indeed.
No, but Getty certainly, he was a one-off.
Yes.
And though his son, I think, was a great art philanthropist and a great, he ended up, I think, spending all his time in England.
Yes.
You know, and the family had their own misfortunes with the grandson being kidnapped and that, you know. But yeah.
When you think of these other sort of multi-millionaires, the like of Carnegie and all the money that he left, you know, for all the Carnegie halls and things. I mean, he was Scottish by birth, wasn't he? And then
that's right, Andrew Carnegie, and there was a Carnegie Library at the bottom of the Falls Road in Belfast.
Oh man, I think there's one in Dublin somewhere. I think I saw one.
Oh my, right. But then you look at people who are giving of their time and money, the way that Dolly Parton, I think, donated £1 million towards vaccine research in America for COVID.
Oh.
And also the way that she has donated books worldwide, in fact, donated books in Belfast to primary schools to encourage kids to read. You know, and, you know, so look at what Bill Gates is doing. You know, there are people who will use the money wisely. There's other people who will just bury it in the garden and hope that it'll grow and that nobody will get their hands on it. But
yes.
But I don't think I shall suffer from that.
No, I don't think so, Mr. Ford. You would not. No, you're too miserable to bury it. You'd rather look at it every night or lie on top of it.
I'd rather indeed, yes, and polish it.
Oh, I know. I drove past your house the other day.
Did you really?
Yes, and you pulled back the net curtains.
Oh, I do that all the time. Yes, the valley of the squinting windows.
Yes.
I like to see who's going to get a wee notebook, you see.
I tooted the horn, but you just looked out the window, the curtains went back, and then I drove off because I knew I wasn't welcome.
Oh, that's it. I'm just glad the Rottweiler wasn't at the bottom of the drive, you know.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Oh, seriously.
Living in splendid isolation.
Aren't we all? Well, till we see you again.
Indeed.
We shall talk in the near future, all being well.
Exactly.
So we'll leave you with the memories of the late Marcus Pickett and Halden Mitchell as they reminisce Omagh 1910.
All the best.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Well, this afternoon, Marcus, we're going to discuss the streets of the town, and you're going to start with Campsie Road.
Campsie Road, Omagh, north side, has a large private dwelling, was in the possession of a Mr. Swan. Then we come further along the road to a Mr. Hugh McNeil, who was an egg merchant. The house I'm referring to is his private dwelling, at the back of which he carried on a special hobby of his, which was mainly overhauling the engines of motor cars. Of course, if you wanted your car overhauled, you might have to wait not days, but weeks. But when it was done, it was well done. Most of the ground then, from that up, was either open gardens or a few private dwellings, until we come to the Customs and Excise Bond Store, belonging to the government, in which stored huge casks of spirit, which remained there for years while they matured. they couldn't remove them until such time as they paid the duty. When the duty was paid, the cask was taken out on the street, and quite often the publican, with help, rolled that cask, which was usually about 50 or 60 gallon in size, rolled that cask up the street to the public house that he owned. At the back of the Customs and Excise store was Hugh McNeil's egg store, where he sorted and packed eggs for export. From there up till the corner, the houses were all private, except number 2 in Campsie Road was an empty shop. And next door to that, on the corner, was Peter McAleer's public house. Now, that completes the north side of Campsie Road. We go now to the south side, and we start here with Homeview Avenue. At the bottom of Homeview Avenue was McPherson's sawmill. This mill, which was in operation, of course, all through the First War, the Great War, cut timber from plantations for miles around Omagh in every direction, and they left the hills of Gurchin Glen completely bare. Then there are a couple of private houses, and we come to the Bank of Ireland. Next, not quite next door, but close by, was Fallows Monumental Sculptors, quite a large place, and did cutting of stones for headstones and other purposes. Beside that was Neely's high-class tailors and outfitters shop. The rest of the houses then were private till we come up to the corner, when we find there was a grocery and general store owned by people named McNichol. We now go to Market Street North. The first building is opposite Peter McAleer's pub, and it was W.J. Corker's butcher's shop, and it was the first building erected after Campsie Bridge had been opened. The meat that they sold had to be slaughtered at the back of the shop, so that the cows and sheep and other animals had to be slaughtered in the backyard. In those days, there was no such thing as an abattoir. The shop next door was mostly empty. Then we come to Sadie Devlin's grocery shop, and Sadie was quite a popular character. She was the daughter of James Devlin, who owned the public house that was next door. Then moving further along past Devlin's public house, we come to Allen's Tea Rooms, and beside them was a shop next to the bridge, which I can remember being used as a fish shop, and we used to stand and watch the crabs and lobsters crawling backwards and forwards in the window. Then we pass over Campsie Bridge, which I think was built around 1868. The other side then is a house, which is reputed to be an old schoolhouse, and in which the Carlin family lived. Attached to that was a shed, which was used as a plumber's shop by a Mr. Mccann, who was related. Then there was a high wall, short piece, and what I consider the smallest house in the town. It had one room downstairs, and one room upstairs. And the total measurement, I would say, was no more than 10 feet by 8 feet. Behind the stone wall and the smallest house was the egg and butter market, which opened usually only on Saturdays to receive farming produce, eggs and butter. The butter was usually in large rolls called firkins, and the firms who used this yard or market were Mercer's Honeyfood Ford from Strabane and Mercer Gallagher from Newton Stewart. And one of the things they had to be on the lookout for was an excess of water in the butter to provide added weight. Then we come to White's Motor Garage, a modern steel-framed building with a corrugated roof and sides. This building extended from the street back to the river. Some of the men employed in the garage were Harry Turney, Peter McGovern, John McNichol, a man the name of McCusker, and others. Beside the garage was J.D. Wilson's public house, and next to that was a ladies' emporium owned by a Mcrae. The next shop was a spirit grocer. That is, they sold spirits and they also sold groceries. And that was owned by a family called McGill. Next door to McGill's was Anderson Brothers, who sold groceries, feeding stuffs, and also hardware. It was owned by George Anderson and his brother Charles Anderson. Beside Anderson Brothers, there was a gateway or entry which led down towards the back of the houses next to the river. There, a man, the name of McKinney, carried on a business as a coach builder. And often coming home from school, I would stand and enjoy looking at his workmanship as he displayed a trap that he had finished, and it was put on the street in front of McNamee's. The shop then, next to the entry, was a public house belonging to the family of McNamee. And on the other side of their private entrance, they had the grocery shop. We now climb up a small hill, and the next shop on the higher ground was more often than not empty. Beside that was a shop selling boots and shoes, but I have no recollection of the name of the owner of this shop. However, beside this boot and shoe shop was a small store or shop owned by a man called John McElroy, who sold anything from a saddle to a halter. And each week he would set off to various markets round about, say Dromore or Drumquin, to sell the things which he had, mainly concerned with horses and farming. Beside John McElroy's was Carlin's newspaper shop. They also sold stationery as well. Then there was another shop next to Carlin's, which was not much in use, but which was a shop containing plumbing supplies belonging to the people called Kirkpatrick's plumbing store. Beside that came McCormick's confectionery shop, and moving on, leaving McCormick's, we come to Miss McCutcheon's ladies' needlework shop. This had a window and all facing onto the street, but the next place was Rolston's auctioneering rooms, and there was only one entrance in off the street. But the building extended right back to the river, and was a huge place in which furniture and various items for sale were stored. An interesting point is that when you were on the other side of the river, there was a faded sign on the end of this building with the word Town Hall, but I was never able to verify whether it had been used as a town hall. The next shop was Dan Mcrae's public house, which I remember was always quite popular. Beside that was a cabinet maker's, owned by people in the name of Jordan. And as well as being cabinet makers, they also made coffins. Then we come to one of the much larger shops in the town, the firm of White Brothers. The principal man that I can remember was Jim White. I can't quite remember the name of his brother, but they had a huge hardware store, which also stocked a large display of china. And at the back of the shop, in a small section, they had a fishing tackle store. And the interesting point about this fishing tackle store is that they supplied fishing tackle all over the world, from New Zealand to Canada and elsewhere. I used to read their small advertisement for White's Flies in the Daily Mail on a Saturday. Beside White's was a chemist's shop owned by people the name of Conway. And next to that was a public house. I don't remember the name of the owner. In fact, it possibly changed hands a number of times. Then, one of the best known shops in the town was that of Davy Young, who was a tobacconist mainly, but had a barber shop at the back, which is well patronised, and beside that he had a small shop which sold fruit and confectionery. On the other side of the gateway from Davy Young was Peter McAleer's bicycle shop, and Peter also sold sewing machines. And in those days, people, even as far back as that time, 1910, 11, 12, and most of the people who bought them on hire purchase, even in those days. Beside Peter McAleer's bicycle shop came John Mcginn's grocery store, but his main business was to hire out vehicles, mostly horse-drawn, say like traps or sidecars, of which he had several. Next to John Mcginn's shop was the cafe, which was managed by a Mrs. Scarf. Then another of the very, very large buildings, almost comparable to White's Brothers, was a big furniture store which extended from the street right back to the river in 2 or 3 stories. This was a furniture shop owned by Crawford and Wilson. Beside that was McGinn's public house, and leaving McGinn's public house we come to the butcher's. This was McConnell's butcher's shop, and like Corkers, they killed their meat or animals on the premises at the back. And next to that then was McAleer's, a boot, shoe and leather store. Due to an oversight, I omitted a particular shop. It was situated between John McElroy's and Carlin's. It was a butcher's shop owned by Keenan Brothers, who, like the other butchers, killed their animals on the premises. And the shop was interesting in the fact that at the front of it, where they used to hang out the meat on show, they had a special canopy which marked the building off from the rest. Then was a very nice old lady. In fact, I remember her inviting the 937 pipe band up to play on the lawn.
In Lisla Mallard House?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
indeed.
And the 937 Mullaghmore Pipe Band was formed out of a battalion of the Enniskillens from the First World War, I'm told.
Not 937, there's Mullaghmore Pipe Band. They're two different bands. LOL 937 was a pipe band, and Mullaghmore was a pipe band. And the difference between the Mullaghmore is that Mullaghmore used keyed chanters, which produced a different sound.
Well, it was 937 then. It was 937 the Mcrae Blues.
Mcrae Blues was the Scotch pipes.
Right.
The others were the keyed pipes.
Very important difference.
Oh, very.
Well, now you mentioned this in the Mallard House. Who lived in Arleston?
I'll come to that in a minute.
Fine. Okay.
After Arleston then was King Houston's. The boys used to come from here and go up there and rob the orchards.
Well, it was a bit easy access.
And then there's a couple of meadows, or one meadow anyhow, in between. And the next house was Newell's.
Yeah, that's where they built the old people's home. Hillview.
Well, the house was already there.
Yes.
That was Newell's.
Yes. Well, what Newells were they?
It had something to do with the law or the courts or something like that. I don't know whether they were qualified solicitors or not.
Well, who lived then opposite in Mcrae, where Dr. Patterson lived?
Knox Brown.
One of the Knox Browns, a 5 mile town.
I don't know where they came from.
The Knox Browns were often.
But they're there, as long as I remember. Nice big long avenue right up to the house. And then after that, the next house on the Mcginn Road was the Miss Campbell's.
Miss Campbell's, yes. It's just been made into a restaurant. About 3 months ago.
And then further along then was Rose Cottage or Tommy Thompson's house.
Yes. Remember it well, visiting with my father. He had the steps up to it, where Beach Grove was built today. Miss Thompson taught me in Sunday school. I remember it well. And then after that was Mullaghmore House. It was originally a stack house. They would have been where Louis Kelly lives today, where the Stacks, they would live there.
I can't remember who was in that at all.
When they built Knocknamull.
Can't remember who was in that at all.
What about Rosemount? Was Willie Johnson living in Rosemount in those days?
Yes.
And then Lisnelly House was another Scott house. Lisnelly further up.
Who's this in Lisnelly House?
Certainly the Scots owned it.
I know, but they didn't live in it.
They didn't live in it.
No.
And I liked him, John Aiken, the chemist, lived in it.
He did.
But this is before then Stanley Roundtree, the solicitor.
Who lived there before that? I, for the moment, can't recollect. I'm not sure.
When you go on, do you ever remember the original Lisnelly house that was on the site of the present Lisnelly camp?
No, because
that Kevin Murray's father bought.
That was away and off the road, and you couldn't see it.
You could, way up in behind the Grange.
Yes, you wouldn't see it.
No, that's correct.
No.
Well, Old Mountjoy further out, were the Dickies living there at the earlier part of this century?
John Dickey. John Dickey lived there as long as I can remember.
Well, was he the Dickey that built Clonavon in Campsie?
No, he was the son.
The son?
He was a son. John Dickey was a son. There was John and Lulu and the other chap who was very, very slim and all.
Well, the last of the Dickey only died a couple of years ago and was buried at Kappa. So they've been around since then. And then, of course, do you remember, I'm sure, the Flemings then living in Campsie House?
Yes, Rose Fleming, Hans Fleming,
Yes,
Dr. Hans, George Fleming. I think there was George as well.
And you mentioned that Conway House, it was a Greer house.
It was.
Was James Greer a solicitor, or was he purely?
No idea.
Or was he a landowner just?
No idea.
And then after that, Colonel Fleming, who would be a connection of the Campsie House people, lived there, isn't that right? Before it eventually was acquired for the children's home.
That's right. Market Street South. We've crossed over from McNichol's Grocery and General Store, and we're now at Conway's Public House. Next to Conway's Public House was a confectionery shop owned by or run by a man by the name of Kemp. Beside that was Smith's Bakery, who made beautiful cakes and other baked items. Then we come to Irwin's, which was a gents' outfitter, and beside them was a McCaffrey's tea rooms. The building next to that, as far as I can remember, had never any use other than being a private house, and that takes us now to Campsie Bridge. Crossing Campsie Bridge, we come to Isaac Boyd's shop. He sold confectionery, vegetables, and similar items. Now, the next shop was vacant and empty for quite a long time, but in the early 20s, it was taken over by a man called George Fair, who sold boots and shoes. And adjoining that was a very large 2 or 3 story building, which was used as an egg store, but it only opened on Thursdays and Saturdays when the farmers came into the market. Next to that was a gateway, which led down into what was known as the market yard. And here, dead pigs brought in from the country by farmers were sold on Thursdays. On Saturdays, live pigs were sold at the same place. However, when it came to the autumn, farmers came in with loads of Scotch flax. Leaving the flax market, we come back onto the main street to a public house. The name of the owner escapes my memory. Next door to the public house was Charlie Mill's confectionery and fruit shop. Beside that was a shop selling second-hand clothes, and I'm not sure whether the name of the owner was a Mr. Donaghy. Beside that was James Nixon's boot and shoe repair shop, and we would sometimes come along, stand at the window and watch them taking pieces of leather out of a bucket of water and beating it for all they were worth to make the leather thinner, stronger and more lasting. Beside that was T.W. Sheffield's jeweller's store, and leaving the jewellery shop behind, we come to the arcade drapery stores, which occupied the whole corner, both on Market Street and Dublin Road. Further along was Carson's newspaper and magazine shop, beside which was Mcgrath's bicycle shop. And then, moving along, we come to the store, which is used by David Clemens to pack, sort and dispatch eggs. Attached to the store was a huge yard which had many uses. Sometimes there were meetings held, and sometimes there were variety stalls and so on in this yard. Now, we cross the street and come to Mcgrath's garage, which stood behind the old Methodist church. Coming back onto the street, we move along and come to the end of the large building occupied by McCluskey's. Now, the end part was used as the dispensary for the area. Beside the dispensary was McCluskey's public house, which had a wonderful display of mirrors and shining brass. As we turn the corner back onto the main street, we are at J.B. Anderson's drapery store, a large complex building which sold material, drapery, curtains and various kinds of material used in the house. The owner, Captain Anderson, resided in a new bungalow which he had built next to Donnelly's Bridge. Unfortunately, something happened to an oil lamp in the porch, and this lamp was upset or spilled in some way and set the building on fire. As there was no efficient fire service, unfortunately the building was completely burned and remained a ruin for a number of years. Coming back into the town then, and next to Anderson's, J.B. Anderson's, was an ice cream shop owned by a man the name of Guy Nardone, who made very nice ice cream indeed. Moving further up the street, we come to Taylor's, which was a boot and shoe shop. And beside Taylor's boot and shoe shop was quite a large drapery store owned by a man called Charles Hutchison. Next to Hutchinson's was the shop of Graham's, who were printers and stationers. And in Christmas time, they also stocked toys. Past the entry, we come to a men's outfitting shop owned by a man the name of Boyers. And next to Boyers was A.A. Love's ladies and men's wear. They kept a different class and a different quality of goods from many of the other shops. Beside that was a high-class men's and ladies' shop run or managed by, owned by a man named Caldwell. Next to that was a cafe, the Victoria Cafe, and then came the public house, which was owned by people in the name of Garrity. But when they came into that public house, I'm not too sure, but it certainly was after the First World War. Then beside that was a very large building, taller than the others, which was a tobacco warehouse owned by a family the name of Hughes. Then beside that was a smaller building which had a bicycle shop owned by a man called William Rogers. And next to Rogers' bicycle shop was a public house. The name of the owner I do not know. And of course, the next building is the old post office, which at that time was now the Academy Grammar School. Next to the grammar school was a large farming supply unit, all sorts of grinding and oil engines or gas engines and equipment for use on the farm. The shop was owned and run by David Black. Next to that was a building which was used as a ladies' high school. And then beside that was the YMCA rooms, which provided facilities for young men. Davy Black's machinery shop, the ladies' high school, and the YM were originally part of the Omagh Infirmary.
'Tis many's a gay night from dark till daylight I spend with people of high renown. but in all their grandeur and heaps to squander, my heart would wander for sweet Omagh town.